All right. Welcome, everybody. The NFL season is here. Ravens, Chiefs underway. Halftime as we speak. But we are here on Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. Week 1, Giants, Vikings, week 1 preview, 1 p.m. Eastern time, Sunday at MetLife Stadium. Excited to preview this game, talk about the matchup with you guys, see how you feel it's going to shake out, answer your questions, tell you what I'm hearing, what I know about the Giants' plans, how they plan to attack the Vikings, and whether they can get it done. Number one thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight is that I expect Tyler Nubin, the rookie second round safety, to start in this game against Minnesota. Now, Dane Belton is limited with a back injury. Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, told me that both players, Belton and Nubin, would have a role in this game. So maybe they find a way to finagle both of them onto the field at the start. Belton gets the first snap, whatever it is. But my understanding is Nubin is going to be the guy back there in this game. He's going to get the start. That's why they drafted him. And so I talked to him a little bit this week about the challenge of delivering on the expectations that the Giants drafted him and spelled out to him directly when they selected him. And Nubin said, he didn't come into this year ever saying, I have to be the starter. I have to earn that job. I have to be that guy right off the bat. What he said the Giants told him is they wanted him to communicate well because that's what he was in college at Minnesota. He was a leader. He was somebody who could direct the defense. And when we were at the Jets joint practices, we heard firsthand, I was standing there right on the sideline. The loudest player on the field was Tyler Nubin directing traffic. Talked to Deonte Banks. He said that Nubin is not afraid to tell people what they did wrong and correct them right there on the field, and that he likes that accountability, that leadership. Nubin also brings a physical presence. And I said to him, I thought that was kind of an underrated part of his game. He agreed. He said he thinks it's a forgotten part of his game, but he does always look to be physical first. Everybody knows he's a ball hawk. He had a lot of takeaways in college. I believe a school record for the Golden Gophers, 13 career interceptions there at Minnesota. But he said to me, I'm not going out there like I got to go get a pick. I got to go get the ball. Usually the ball finds me. But when I get into my game, when I'm most comfortable is when I lay a big hit on somebody or I'm getting physical and I get that little shot in early. I'd rather get the big hit because I'm a tone setter for sure. And I actually talked to him at length a little bit even after the interview was over. I think Nubin believes people are sleeping on him. Neighbors is getting a lot of attention. Everybody's excited. And obviously a lot of pressure on the Giants, on Brian Daboll, on Daniel Jones, and on the offense. But I think Tyler Nubin feels like people don't know what he can bring. And of course, it's a big matchup against Justin Jefferson and the Minnesota Vikings. Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, a good schemer on the offensive side. So it's going to be a challenge. But I think Nubin is an underrated X factor in this game. And the last thing I would say is that Deonte Banks told me that the way that he feels he can take a step this year as a corner is it's not physical as much as mental, his mental aspect of his game. And that means reading offenses, their tendencies, knowing what certain formations are indicating what that team likes to run out of that, having situational awareness of the game and also of your opponent, their strengths, their weaknesses, so that he knows what his alignment needs to be and can play his game freely and fast accordingly. And I think it's no coincidence that Nubin is a guy who came in here knowing that it's his job to know his job, but also everybody else is on the field as well. He said that to me directly. Maybe I can help some other people understand their responsibilities as well as my own. And I think that this is a tandem that the Giants need to work together hand in hand to really be the type of secondary and defense that they need to be. Obviously, only 1 year of NFL experience between them. So a lot of youth in that secondary, a lot of concern about how they'll hold up throughout the year, of course, back there. Adoree Jackson brought in last minute to support and supplement that unit. But I think Nubin is an exciting player from what we saw from him the second half of training camp when he got back from that early calf issue. And I think it's exciting that he is expected from my standpoint to start in week 1 on this defense alongside Jason Pinnock with Dane Belton limited and also Nubin coming into his own. I want to tell you about our sponsors, then we'll get right into more Giants talk and to your questions and NFL questions even, as I'm sure some of you have one eye on this and one eye on Ravens Chiefs. As I do, I have the screen here, the simulcast going on So any big developments there, we can also discuss about the game. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I pour mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar that is convenient for on-the-go professionals and parents. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced coffee and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte from this all-natural concentrate. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. By the way, thanks to the people who have purchased Boom Chaga with that code. We've seen orders rolling in, so thank you to everybody for supporting the channel, supporting Boom Chaga at boomchaga.com with that Talkin Ball 25 code or the QR code right here on your screen. And also to the people who have been ordering at estate98.com/Talkin Ball. Remember, we're going to have trivia coming up here where whoever gets the answer correct first is going to win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. Already have had 4 winners. I'm going to continue to see that rolling in. BetOnline also sponsors us, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, here's the trivia question. We're going to start right off the top. Before we get into your questions, before we get into the fan and listener and viewer comments, we're going to start with our trivia question. So the trivia question tonight is, in the last 5 NFL seasons, there are 3 players on the defensive side of the ball with 7.5 sacks or more in the NFL. Who are they? 3 players with 7.5 sacks or more in the last 5 NFL seasons. Name them. The first person to name them in the chat will win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. All right, as you guys think about those answers, try to figure that out and pop them in the chat. I'm going to tell you some notes and nuggets about what I see coming in this Giants game. First of all, something I thought that was interesting. Kevin O'Connell, the Minnesota Vikings head coach, in his 3rd season as a head coach, this is actually the first time he will be coaching in MetLife Stadium as a head coach. Been a coordinator before, been an assistant coach before, but has never been on the MetLife Stadium sideline as a head coach. In 2022, he played the Jets once and the Giants twice, but he played them all out in Minnesota, including the playoff game against the New York Giants. So an interesting tidbit there that he's coming into an environment as a head coach that he is unfamiliar with to this point. Also, very strange thing here, but this is only the 2nd Vikings game against the Giants in New Jersey in the last decade. They beat the Giants 28-10 in 2019, October of that year. Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen doing damage in that game. But since from 2015 through this 2024 season, this week 1 opener for the Giants, only the 2nd Vikings trip to New Jersey, to MetLife Stadium, to play Big Blue in this past decade. Very interesting there that it just didn't align differently. The Giants, of course, looking to have more success in week 1 at MetLife Stadium than they are accustomed to. They are 4-10 in MetLife Stadium home openers overall, and they are 0-5 in week 1 home openers at MetLife Stadium in their last 5. The last time the Giants won a home opener at MetLife Stadium was 2010 against the Carolina Panthers. I had to do a double take as I was looking that up. I thought that was a stunning stat and one that really, really caught me off guard. Let's see if anyone has the answers. The trivia question, I see somebody asking me to repeat it. The trivia question is 3 players on the defensive side of the ball with 7.5 sacks or more in the last 5 years. Who are they? I'm seeing some answers coming in, and they are not accurate. The question is essentially 3 pass rushers who have had 7.5 sacks each season in the last 5 seasons. There's only 3 guys in the entire league. Other stats and tidbits on the Giants that deserve to be covered, that have kind of been rolling in on the ticker as we sit here in week 1 and the NFL news cycle ramps up. Bobby Okereke, middle linebacker for the Giants, defensive captain. He had a contract restructure done by the Giants, basically for operational money throughout the season. They restructured his contract to create $4.5 million in cap space. That was done basic accounting. You know, you have to elevate guys from the practice squad. You have to operate your roster, have some operational money as you go throughout the season. So that was just based on necessity at this point. The Giants doing that with Okereke's contract. Okereke, while we're talking about him, another stat that I thought really stood out to me, that I think is worthwhile mentioning to the Giants fans out there, and that is that only 6 times since 1999 in the NFL has a defensive player recorded 140 plus tackles, 10 plus passes defended, and 10 plus tackles for a loss. The names on that list are Derek Brooks, Ray Lewis, Zach Thomas, Levante David twice, and Bobby Okereke last year for the New York Giants. Super interesting to me there, that Okereke is on that list, and really I think reinforces to me that while I know Okereke is the type of player who you hope is, backing up his 2023 season with the same type of performance in 2024, it's really surprising to me looking at, like, for example, when Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, who came on our podcast, when he did his list and polling the league about top 10 at different positions, that Okereke wasn't in there, wasn't mentioned, wasn't in that list. I thought that was a snub. I think this type of stat reinforces that. Bobby O, 149 tackles, 10 passes defended, and 11 tackles for loss last year. An exclusive list. 6 players since 1999 have done that. Levante David, Zach Thomas, Ray Lewis, Derek Brooks, and Bobby Okereke. Quite a distinguished list to be on there for Bobby O. Also, Carter Coughlin, cut by the Giants. That kind of caught me off guard. Art Stapleton, a fellow beat writer, for USA Today network there, he reported that they are bringing him back to the practice squad despite cutting him. That makes sense to me because Carter Coughlin has been practicing this week as a part of their core special teams unit, which we all know he's a part of. So I thought that was a little bit curious. Obviously, roster reshuffling. Maybe they're trying to get somebody up from the practice squad as well for the game or instead for the game. I'm kind of curious to see how that shakes out. Definitely has to be a disappointing development for Carter Coughlin. Obviously, players don't want to be cut in general, so that's disappointing, and that's an obvious statement by me. But I mean more so in the context of this is a player who last year, Carter Coughlin, was the kind of guy who he was in a position on the roster where he had played some snaps in the preseason on defense, and on the Wink Martindale defense, even though he had some good snaps in the preseason, once the regular season rolled around, he fell completely out of that defensive rotation and regressed to, as far as his usage, a pure special teamer. And he's good at it, but that, he was a guy who wanted to continue to grow, wanted to get more opportunities on defense. So this is really have to be a bitter taste here for Carter Coughlin, where he's going from wanting more defensive snaps, wanting a chance to play on defense as an inside linebacker, re-signing here with Martindale gone, presumably because he thinks and has been told he's getting that type of shot or look on the inside. Does some of it in the spring for the Giants, but then come August is relegated back to exclusively special teamer, and now as a former Giants draft pick, cut and being re-signed to the practice squad. So can't be something that has been easy for Carter Coughlin to take here in week one, but definitely, in my opinion, far from the most noteworthy thing that's happened so far in the last couple of days in Giants land. And that is, and I see you all here, guys, get right to your questions soon. We got D Kit, we got Chronicles, we got Barb, we got Hunter. I see all you guys here, Steve, etc. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for jumping in on Talkin Ball live here on Thursday night of week one. Really excited for everything that we're going to be doing this season. But definitely the number one storyline to me is that Joe Schoen got caught on a hot mic on Hard Knocks, talking to Chicago Bears GM Ryan Poles and saying, hey, it must be nice not having to look at, and then making a throwing motion with his hands. And Ryan Poles says, oh, quarterbacks? Yeah, hopefully we don't have to do that for a long time. Of course, no surprise that Joe Schoen is still scouting quarterbacks. No surprise that we know, the fire is lit under Daniel Jones. The pressure is on internally, externally. We all know the Giants went and tried to draft his successor in the spring, and now they're continuing to scout these top quarterbacks. Now, Joe Schoen was on the road on Labor Day weekend at several games, including Colorado's Shedeur Sanders playing there, top quarterback prospect. The hot mic conversation that was caught on tape there between Schoen and Ryan Poles was at the Georgia Clemson game. Carson Beck, top quarterback prospect at that game. So no coincidence there. As the Kansas City Chiefs get into the end zone, looks like Isaiah Pacheco in there, and looks like they will be going up 20-10 here in the third quarter. But, it's one thing for Joe Schoen to obviously be operating as somebody who is trying to improve at any position that he can. And, there's a lot of people who in Giants land in the NFL who think that he should be trying to replace Daniel Jones, and he should be, on the road, understanding that it's incumbent upon him to go get his next quarterback now. So not blaming the GM for doing his job in that respect. The problem is that hot mic moment reveals that Schoen is undercutting his own quarterback to other people in the NFL, and that it becomes public is the problem, right? Private conversations about what you think of players and their abilities, and, honesty from executives is obviously welcome. But in that type of moment, you're days away from your quarterback being in a position where he's playing for his career with your team and he already knows it. So the pressure's already on. But to have something like that become public, it becomes a headline on NFL.com. It gets aggregated by NFL.com, the league website. It's on Hard Knocks. He's saying it to the Chicago Bears general manager. Like, this is basically the tone of that comment is, of course, that you have one and we're still looking, right? And so, it's, of course, the problem is that it was made public, but it's not a good look. And part of me wonders what ownership thinks of that type of comment getting out, because we all know that Daniel Jones is somebody that John Mara and the Giants organization have said they still believe in. John Mara saying, let's give this guy a fighting chance. Let's give him a better offensive line. Let's give him more weapons. So interesting in the context of Joe Schoen's offseason, kind of putting himself on the line with the positional value argument at running back and Saquon Barkley, and now making this overt type statement that's caught on camera and on microphone about the quarterback that he re-signed to a 4-year, $160 million contract. Even if he's not wrong, not a good look. But, of course, Daniel Jones and the Giants can obviously put a better taste in everybody's mouths by going out and beating Sam Darnold, beating the Vikings, Brian Flores, Kevin O'Connell, and everybody wearing white, purple, and gold on Sunday. So I'm going to get to all of your questions, and we'll continue to talk some Giants football here on Talkin Ball Live. Chronicle says, well, Pat, Giants have to win on Sunday to set the tone for the season and show us what they're about. Do they truly have the heart and giddiness that Dexter says they have? So I'll start with that. I think, Chronicles, that the Giants do have confidence in themselves, in their abilities. As I said, Tyler Nubin talking with a lot of confidence about himself and about his abilities and feeling like he's going to show people what he's really about. Malik Neighbors not showing many nerves, even though there's a lot of pressure and expectations on him. And, going around the locker room, even like John Runyon Jr., he had the shoulder issue. I'm sure he's playing through a little bit of pain there, but asked him, how's your shoulder? He said, good, I'm ready to go. Andrew Thomas, by the way, just kind of a random comment here. Andrew Thomas has put on a lot more definition of muscle on his body in the weight room. He told me he kind of like gets at peace now when he's lifting. He really kind of uses that as like an oasis and a quiet time in his mind. And he really kind of has embraced that in the gym, in the weight room. I know the injuries bother him, like missing all that time last year really bothers him and nags him. So he's committed. He's always been committed, a hard worker, but really excited about what I see. Andrew Thomas just, he's already a big left tackle, a guy who towers over most people on the field, but has clearly kind of toned and honed his body and is in the peak physical condition that I've seen him since he has joined the Giants. But yeah, the vibes are pretty high right now. There's a lot of excitement around the locker room and around the players. Obviously, Brian Burns, a player they're excited about. And Dexter Lawrence is a supremely confident player in person. I mean, he thinks and knows that there have been games where he has taken them over. He has dominated from the interior, from that defensive tackle position, Gabe. So I think there's a lot of confidence and excitement in the locker room. Overall, in the organization, I think it's a little bit more of, I think it's a little bit tense in the sense that everybody knows what's at stake, right? Brian Daboll knows his job is at stake this season. Joe Schoen knows that if they can have a good enough season this year to get to next year, maybe they'll be in good shape, but they have to get through this season and they have to have a good enough season this year to demonstrate that it's headed towards progress in 2025 and not going the other way like it looked like last year. On the defensive side of the ball, there's some intrigue and confidence there from some of these young corners and safeties and players. But Micah McFadden may not play. They might have to start a late round rookie pick in Darius Muasau at linebacker next to Bobby Okereke. They know they don't have a solution yet next to Dexter Lawrence or behind him at defensive tackle. Still yet to be seen who's going to contribute there for 4 quarters in a regular season game against a running game like Aaron Jones and the Vikings are going to throw at them on Sunday. There's a lot of nervous energy accompanying that excitement, Gabe, is how I would say it. All right. He also asks, how does the young secondary look? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Let me get to some other questions and I'll come back to your other questions there, Gabe. Barb says tough sledding with a bad O-line for any quarterback. Yeah, you're referring to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Watching them now, Lamar is still fascinating though, right? He makes a ton of plays. It's interesting to me watching this game, by the way, that Steve Spagnuolo has kind of been okay with Lamar Jackson running underneath. Like he's sending the rushers. They're trying to get him. And if they don't get him, he is escaping and getting some yards and getting out into space. But it seems like the Chiefs are trying to make sure they take away any big plays. They don't want the ball to go down the field. But you're seeing why Lamar is a 2-time MVP. Almost every time I watch Lamar, I am reminded of why, at the beginning of the year when we pick MVP candidates, right? Like this year I picked CJ Stroud. But when you watch Lamar, it's always a good reminder, that there's good and then there's great and then there's special. And he's one of them. But that's a good point, Barb. It is tough sledding without an O-line for most quarterbacks. Though you do see, of course, in this game, to your point, yes, there are plays where it breaks down and, Mahomes gets hit, throws an interception. Lamar Jackson not able to make some of the plays he's looking for because of the pressure he's facing with guys going in and out, injuries, rotating linemen to different positions. But we also have seen plays in this game where like Patrick Mahomes made that one escape to his right from the pocket in the first half and threw about like a 20-yard dart on the move to his right to Travis Kelce, who shook his man on basically a scramble drill and made a huge play down the field on an eventual touchdown drive. Or you see Lamar Jackson using his legs and his vision to get 8 yards on a play that should have been a 5-yard loss. And that's what you need from Daniel Jones, right, Barb? I mean, you said it's easy to sit here and say, well, he's not Lamar Jackson and he's not Patrick Mahomes. And obviously nobody thinks, even if Daniel plays out of his mind on Sunday, he's not going to be those players. He's not Josh Allen. But you do need the quarterback to play a different game, to play a game that he can at times, it's not going to happen every play, but at times he's going to overcome some of those deficiencies or those breakdowns. Now, last year was a good example, Barb, of there were just too many of them up front on the offensive line. There were too many breakdowns for Daniel Jones really to even handle last year. He wasn't playing well either. But it can't be that consistent, because that's the point where it's hard to really pin anything on the quarterback if everything else is breaking down as well. Hunter says, what's up with Mark Andrews? I don't think I've ever seen him just non-existent like he's been, likely has been Lamar Jackson's first or second read tonight. Well, I would say this. I think Andrews, first of all, is a better blocker than Likely is. So, as I was just watching the Chiefs bat away a deep pass down the field for Zay Flowers. But Mark Andrews is a better blocker than Lively is. So if they have both of those guys on the field, Andrews is a player who, some of the props dropping behind me. Look at this. That's my old paper at the Observer at Notre Dame and St. Mary's. That's a story I wrote right there about Brady Quinn and Tyrone Willingham and the Giants and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish offense in 2004. It's kind of memorialized there. And first time that's happened. Going to have to keep that a little sturdier. But to answer your question, have Isaiah Andrews both on the field. If one of them is staying in and blocking or chipping before he goes out, that's going to be Mark Andrews. And so that's part of the reason. But also, Hunter, it looks to me like Lamar Jackson has been looking downfield once and then coming back underneath to his backs and to those underneath reads. It looks like the defense is dictating that to him. I believe Steve Spagnuolo is taking some of that away. I believe that's what I've seen watching the game. All right, let's get to Gabe, one of your other questions here. I'll pop back down and see if anybody got the answers to these questions. But let's see. Gabe also said, all right, a lot of questions that need to be answered Sunday about this team. I want to see a Giants team that shows heart and passion, because that's how we won in 2022. I believe this roster is better than 2022. That'll be an interesting thing to see, because I think they do have some high-end players who are better than some of their top players at certain key positions compared to the playoff season. But, like on the offensive line, for example, having Feliciano, Nick Gates, some guys playing with some attitude and nastiness in that season, right? Like that's just a good example of tone setting and the type of kind of attitude and being difficult to play against, right? Having guys being a factor in that year, Saquon Barkley, for example, on that team, really as the catalyst for that offense. You had a Dory Jackson playing at a pretty high level that year when he was healthy. You had Julian Love on that team at safety. Is this team better at safety with Jason Pinnock and Tyler Nubin than Xavier McKinney and Julian Love? It is impossible to look somebody in the face at this moment and say that this year's safety group is better than that year's safety group, right? So on the other hand, Bobby Okereke, right? Better middle linebacker than they've had. You have, let's see, at guard, of course, a John Runyon Jr. You hope Jermaine Illuminor is an improved right tackle over what the Giants have had. Evan Neal last 2 years, that type of thing. But Chronicles, I think what's really interesting about the Giants is there's a little bit of give and take there. There are some areas they look improved compared to 2022. And there are some areas where, you look at the year 2 years ago and see why they won and why they started 6-1, how they did it defensively. They beat this Baltimore Ravens team with Lamar Jackson, with Wink Martindale's defense, late turnover forced by Julian Love. That was a huge win, a big win. Are they a team now that could knock off a team like the Ravens, like Lamar Jackson? We'll have to see. All right, let's get to more questions here. We have Steve C says, what's your prediction and stats for Daniel Jones in week 1? Steve, that's a really good question on Daniel Jones' stats for week 1. Um, let's say this. I'll say that Daniel Jones and the Giants are throwing a little bit more, especially in the second half, maybe trailing in the game. And I would say that he'll definitely be using his legs. They'll be blitzing, showing pressure. He's going to have to get out and move. I'll say Daniel Jones ends up with something like, 7 or 8 rushes for 45 yards, something like that. No touchdowns on the ground. And then I'll say he has, 219 yards passing with a touchdown and an interception, something like that. I think it's going to be a close game. I do think you look at the 41.5 over under and the 1.5 points the Vikings are favored by. I think that tells you what this game is going to be, or what Vegas sees this game is going to be, which is low scoring, tight. It's going to be 1 or 2 plays that decide the game. I think I told you guys already on Monday, I believe that this is like a first touchdown scored wins type of game. I think Minnesota, if it can dictate the game and prevent Sam Darnold from having to drop back too often in obvious passing, trailing situations, and the Giants pass rush can't pin their ears back and go, then I think Minnesota will have a much easier time if they end up having to, it'll be easier for them to hand it to Aaron Jones, control the game and kind of protect Darnold from himself, from being exposed to that pass rush and some bad decisions, than having to air it out, drop back, and letting Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and Kayvon Thibodeau kind of have their way and have ample opportunities. Because if you give them enough swings, like, they'll get the quarterback, right? So, but that's my prediction for Daniel Jones: 219 passing, a touchdown and a pick, and let's say 8 rushes for 45 yards or 48 yards, something like that. Let's see. Will Adoree Jackson actually play? Because we need him for whatever we can get from him. So the way I think they're going to use him in week 1 to start is, I still think either Cordell Flott or Nick McLeod is going to start on the outside opposite Deonte Banks. I believe Adoree Jackson is still being groomed and acclimated and kind of weaned back into the roles that they intend to give him probably down the road. He, I believe, is going to factor on special teams, punt return, but maybe not as the returner, maybe as the vice. Like, that's what he mentioned in his press conference right off the bat when he signed. He said, whatever they ask me to do, I'll do. I think they're going to have him play on special teams, coverage, return, etc. But even, like I said, not as a returner. And then spot kind of support the defense as they need him. If it's a really bad start for the guys out there, maybe they run him into the game earlier than they would have intended. But I do believe the Adoree Jackson plan looks like he won't start early and right away, and he will be a factor, but won't be like a starter or a 60 snap guy here. But I do think the plan, of course, when you sign him like they did, it looks like the plan will be to get him up to that game speed and that game ability of playing that snap level. And once he's there, that he will be the guy opposite Banks. So I think it'll be something that happens gradually. I don't know how many weeks that'll take. I don't know if, let's say McLeod starts outside on Sunday. I don't know if he has a rough first quarter, if they'll throw Adoree Jackson in and have him play the final 3 quarters, or if he still has to kind of have his snaps managed. I view it more as a managing snap situation. So I think McLeod and Flott, probably a little bit like Daniel Jones, as we kind of view him at quarterback. It looks, everybody, like McLeod and Flott probably have a little bit of a leash early on, but maybe not a long one. As Adoree Jackson now lurks on the roster, poised to, of course, take that job when the Giants decide it's time for him to do that. Hunter Keller says, what running back duo do you think is going to be more lethal? Saquon and Jalen Hurts, or Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson? Ooh, that's a really good question, Hunter. That's a really good one. I think that the Baltimore Ravens commit more to the run than the Eagles do. So I believe that in the end, if all four of those players are healthy, I do think it's Lamar and Henry on the ground. Now, Saquon's explosiveness, like his big play ability, combined with Hurts's ability to pull it on those read options and throw as well as get out on his own. Like I think that's an interesting, potentially like more high end dynamic that could result in, like, let's say Henry and Lamar are obviously just as dynamic and are guys who can get first downs and frustrate defenses and move the chains. I think maybe the Saquon Hurts dynamic is one that more could send Saquon off the edge for 80 yards because Jalen Hurts kept the ball the last 2 or 3 times and now he gives it to him. And all Saquon needs to do is make one move and he's out and he's in space. And we know what happens when he gets in space, right? So I would say that that's an interesting one. I think Henry Lamar is probably the one that you take if you have to win one game, I would think, based on just how lethal they both are in different areas of the run game. But Saquon Hurts are right there as well. And I'm really excited to watch that Brazil game, by the way. Eagles Packers, really excited for that one. All right, let's see who got our trivia question right. 3 players with 7.5 sacks or more in the last 5 seasons. All right. We had a TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Daniel guess no. We had a Bosa, Garrett, Parsons guess no. TJ Watt, Dexter Lawrence, Nick Bosa no. Let's see. Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, Hassan Reddick no. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Max Crosby incorrect. Oh, it looks like Gabe has won again. Gabe with the answer to our trivia question. Myles Garrett, Chris Jones, and Brian Burns is the correct answer. That's 2 straight chats, Gabe, that you have won our Estate 98 sponsored trivia. So those are the 3 players in the NFL who have 7.5 sacks or more in the last 5 seasons in the NFL. Gabe, don't forget to DM me, whether it's on X, Instagram, whatever, your address so I can get you your free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. I think you'll love it. It's basically a half a month supply of an excellent coffee from El Salvador. So I think you'll love it. Great job getting that right. Like you took a lot of swings. But you got it. But yeah, thank you for everybody for being here. We're going to continue through the queue here of questions. This is, of course, Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, and we are hosting this on the Believe Network and on the PL on NFL YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed already, please do. But thank you so much to everyone who has. We have over 3,000 subscribers now and counting. It's pushing towards 3,050 just after one more day. We're growing exponentially here. That's thanks to all of you guys who've supported the channel and so supportive and diehards for your team and for this sport. Remember, if you want your comment or question answered first, you can purchase a super chat, and that will elevate your comment or question to the top of my queue. Once I see that roll in, I will answer your comment or question immediately, or it will be next up after whatever I'm talking about. If you don't want to purchase a super chat or super sticker, you could just pop your question into the queue. I'll get to it eventually. All I ask is that you please hit those like buttons while we are live. Hit the like button under the video right now that you're watching. Those live like buttons help a lot to drive the algorithm to tell those fans out there, the people who don't know yet, the people who don't know that we do post-game lives from the Giants games in the press box at MetLife Stadium and on the road every week. It tells them to sign up, subscribe, and be here, because what I'm doing on Talkin Ball with Post-Game Live is bringing all of you information directly from the Giants locker room, from Brian Daboll's press conference. Like, for example, after this Minnesota Vikings game, win, lose, or draw, and we know Brian Daboll does have one tie on the resume from that Washington game in 2022. Win, lose, or draw, I will be up in the press box, filing my story to the New York Daily News, and then jumping right on the Believe Network on the YouTube channel to tell you guys what I heard, saw and observed in the locker room, talking to the players, watching them, interviewing them, finding information out on injuries, updates, breaking news if there is any to come out of that game, and also obviously gauging how the game looked, how it played out, second guessing decisions that we saw on the field, praise for people who made big plays or key decisions on the sideline or between the white lines, and also a breakdown schematically of what we saw, why there were failures and successes, and projecting what it means for the Giants team heading into week 2 against Washington. We also have podcast dropping on the YouTube channel and on the Believe Network audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on audio right now, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, PL on NFL on YouTube, and join us next time while we are live. But on the Believe Network, on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard channel, there is an interview dropping with Gary Myers, longtime NFL columnist and Hall of Fame voter. And we have an in-depth conversation about Eli Manning's Hall of Fame candidacy in 2025, as well as previewing this Giants season. Also a podcast that I was glad to be on with Mike Wobskull in Minnesota, Wobby, as they call him out there near the Great Lakes. And we had about a 40 or 50 minute conversation breakdown to preview this Vikings Giants opener. It's Believe in Vikings, I believe is the name of the podcast, but it will also be popped into and popped on my podcast feed on audio. So if you're subscribed on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, so if you're not subscribed yet on the audio version, go to your app right now, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever app you use to listen to pods. Subscribe to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, and there you will get every interview I do with guests on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, and also every audio version of the Talkin Ball lives that we do here. So that's all we're doing. Also, every week we are going to have former NFL wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Benny Fowler here on Mondays to break everything down with me. So a Monday morning quarterbacking type review of the Sunday action, and we'll go around the league. Will not just be exclusive to the Giants. Of course, we'll cover that in Talkin Ball Live. But Benny Fowler and I, every week on Mondays, you can count on an episode dropping probably early Monday afternoon. Should be good for while you're sitting there at work, killing time, ready to go, or for your drive home, or as you're sitting there after dinner to watch on the YouTube channel a review of all the action we've seen around the league, talking about the big topics that are happening league wide, the trends that we're seeing, whether it's officiating, what offenses are running, why teams aren't matching and meeting the expectations they had going in. Benny is so smart and so savvy about kind of understanding the nuances of how the league works and cuts right through the BS to the truth. He really is excellent and sharp and one of my best friends in this business. And I'm really excited to have him involved with Talkin Ball so regularly. Somebody who also really has helped me get this podcast off the ground. So just like Authentic giving back and having Authentic on the channel and having a great collab there with someone who's another great content creator, Benny Fowler, another person who I'm grateful to for helping us continue to grow here. More great announcements to come about Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard as far as sponsors go, as far as merch goes. But let's get back to your guys' questions. Thanks again, everybody who is here. We're going to continue rolling. Okay, Justin, 1890 says, Pat, looking forward to your continued great coverage throughout the season. Thank you, Justin. Justin says, what do you see as the biggest keys to victory for Sunday's matchup with the Vikings? So, Justin, I think already I said I think the team that scores the first touchdown will have a leg up because of how it dictates how the game plays out. So I think scoring a touchdown first, I should say, is imperative. Of course, protecting the ball offensively from Daniel Jones's end, not just from a game management standpoint and not wanting to give Darnold and the Vikings short fields and more possessions, but also we know how bad it could get, the booze could get inside MetLife Stadium if we see a lot of turnovers, if we see a lot of bad offensive play, if we see bad quarterback play, right? Like this is not the scenario, the scene, the place, the location for a Daniel Jones meltdown, right? This is a pressure cooker moment. There's so much riding on a clean game from number 8, but an aggressive game as well. And protecting the ball, Justin, is also crucial because Brian Flores is going to send the house. He's going to bring the blitz. He's going to send a lot of extra pass rushers, and the Giants are going to have to keep Daniel Jones as clean as they can, but also he's going to have to make the right decisions with the football. And so those are things to look for. I would also say Brian Daboll, how he manages the game, right? Last year, 3 losses in close games that the Giants should have won. New York Jets, LA Rams, Buffalo Bills. Some critical moments of situational football that Daboll and his team were unable to execute in critical moments. Things that they really have to have buttoned up this time around. Him as a full-time play caller for the Giants now, but also as the head coach on the sideline managing the game. That process not only has to be buttoned up, but in the key big pressure cooker moments, Daboll needs to be the face of calm, reason, and sound decision-making for the Giants, something that did not happen last year and led to a lot of the kind of fracturing and negativity that we saw from that Giants team. So, I would say scoring touchdown first, protecting the ball, Brian Daboll, game management. And Justin also, and you could listen at another point to my interview on Mike's podcast, Believe in Vikings, and you can listen to it on my channel if you subscribe to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard on Believe or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And that is both teams' interior lines on both sides are areas that the opponent could theoretically exploit. Like Dexter Lawrence, obviously, is a premier player. So you're not exploiting Dexter Lawrence, but the Giants' defensive line interior behind him is not proven or strong. The Vikings' interior defensive line is not imposing, right? Harrison Phillips, Jerry Tillery, some players who they're NFL players, but are they guys that are going to push your interior offensive line around? You don't think so, but the Giants, of course, their interior has to prove themselves, right? John Runyon Jr., Greg Van Roten, bookending John Michael Schmitz there. They need to prove themselves. And then, so, who wins that battle? And then the Minnesota Vikings interior offensive line, also not one that strikes fear in the hearts of opponents necessarily. But in my vision, in my opinion, both the Giants and the Vikings need to find a way with those interior lines to try to take advantage of the opponent's D-line and deficiencies in that area to run the football and control the game. So, Justin, as much as I think most people are going to be focusing, and, for good reason, obviously, on guys like Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, and, you had Van Ginkel and who is it? Jonathan, was it Bullard or Grenard, coming for the Vikings against Andrew Thomas. Those matchups, I think, they're going to matter on some 3rd and longs and some key passing downs. But I think the interior O-line versus D-line matchup is something that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. And I think both teams' O-lines can exploit the opponent's D-lines in the run game there. So I think it'll be interesting to see, who's planning to do that. King Chris TV says, I like that outside linebacker we got from Miami. I got to be honest, I'm struggling to think about who you're referring to there, Chris. Please let me know that because I know they've added several backers lately, but I'm kind of drawing a blank. I mean, we got Curtis Bolton. He's from Oklahoma, from California. He's a linebacker, special teamer. We have Ty Summers, a guy who is a practice squatter from TCU, comes from San Antonio, Texas originally. Let's see. We also have yeah. Let me know who you're talking about there. Interesting. We got Benton Whitley's another guy on the team. Where's he from? Holy Cross, Springfield, Mass. So yeah. Let me know who you're asking about. I'll give you more information, but I'm a little bit I'm not putting two and two together there. Omega says, because of Daniel Jones' health is why I think Joe Schoen is out there looking. I also think Daniel knows that for that reason, Joe is still looking for that quarterback. Yeah, Omega, definitely all of that's true. I just think, even though, of course, Shane's intent there is not to shove it in Daniel's face or in the public's eye, because that's not what he's doing there. But I think because it becomes public, it's a bad look, because you don't want people knowing that you're out there telling everyone, yep, still looking for a quarterback, man. Wish I wasn't, right? Just not something you want out. Chris says Daniel Jones needs to come out swinging. I need to see like 3 passing touchdowns at least. Definitely a lot riding on what he does. Let's see. Michael says they can say they believe in Jones, but the reality is they don't believe in him, and it's obvious. Michael, that's as succinctly and accurately as I think someone has put it. You're right. I've been talking around it and around it and around it. That's exactly the point. They can say they believe in Jones, but the reality is they don't. At least based on that comment, the general manager obviously sounds like he doesn't in that moment, correct? I mean, it's impossible to interpret it any other way. Steven says, Pat, as an insider, do you know what people in the league thought of Dave Gettleman for real? And do you know what is thought of Joe Schoen? Not sure if you're able to answer this, just was curious and thought I would ask. Yeah, Steven, Gettleman was known as a guy who was a lifelong scout. I think both of them are viewed as really good scouts, and people have questions about both of their general manager capabilities. That's what I would say. I would, to group them as into that answer. I think, Shane being young and still a first-time GM, there's a little more leeway and rope of people saying like, okay, I can see what he's doing here. Let's see if this progresses. Let's see if this guy, if this plan that he has in place, if these puzzle pieces start to fit, if he starts putting it together, some people in the league can see what he's doing from a standpoint of adding top players at key positions, right? Edge rusher, Brian Burns. He already had the left tackle. He already had the defensive tackle. Now he drafts a number 1 wide receiver, right? So those are examples of that. And then, of course, the quarterback is, at least obviously we see in Hard Knocks, the quarterback remains the missing piece. So the missing piece would be either Daniel Jones turns into the guy they thought he was and paid him to be, or they go out and get another one. But Steven, one thing I would say for Gettleman, his ego and arrogance just got in the way. Internally, the Giants building was not known for a great work ethic, and was also somebody who I think was resting more on what he felt his reputation was, rather than being somebody who was putting in all the time to drive the bus. Of course, you have to acknowledge, obviously, that with some of those high picks, he gets Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, guys like that. Joe Schoen, obviously, still waiting on whether Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Deontay Banks. Now we have Malik Neighbors in here, even second rounders. You go to Wan'Dale Robinson, John Michael Schmitz, right? And now Tyler Nubin. Like Joe Schoen is still, in fairness to Gettleman, we're still waiting to see if Joe Schoen selected one great player out of any of them, right? We're still waiting to see if any of those guys become great. Whereas Gettleman drafted Andrew Thomas, who's one of the higher paid left tackles in football, and Dexter Lawrence, who is one of the higher paid defensive tackles in football. But, Steven, to answer your question, what people in the league thought of Gettleman was lifelong scout, but not a good general manager. And then obviously a lot of people were surprised, no matter what people want to say, that they took Daniel Jones there, 6th overall. And then as far as Shane goes, I think he does have a reputation right now as somebody who is, I don't want to use the word cutthroat necessarily, but, he definitely has harsh and hard conversations with people around the league, that are direct, honest, and even to a fault. I think that the relationship building and maintenance element of the job that Joe Schoen is doing is not an easy one, but you can burn bridges pretty quickly if people think you believe you know it all, and that like agents, for example, players, they matter as much and they talk as much, as other executives, people from other teams, etc. And if you burn people enough or handle situations in questionable ways that have people raising their eyebrows, you can get a reputation as somebody to kind of look out for and watch. And so some of those situations that got contentious or were mishandled by the organization with Schoen here, Nick Gates, Saquon Barkley being a couple of them, whether it was contentiousness or mishandling in those instances, those are things that have people still looking kind of with an eye at, okay, where's this going to go from here, right? And certainly in Hard Knocks, I think the Giants came off as an organization and Schoen came off as a general manager who, definitely appeared to have the freedom to do things his own way and was definitely operating with a confidence and even at times a little bit of a swagger of believing that wholeheartedly that it's the correct way to do it. But then at certain times wondering if the process really was matching up with that confidence. So whether it was his inability to fully understand and gauge the running back market, even when he was receiving some advice of what it was going to be accurately about Saquon Barkley, kind of the misunderstanding or the surprise about how free agency was going to mean so much overpaying. A lot of things in some of the conversations and the process of how they got to their decisions as a front office and as an organization that people in the NFL had questions about. And so as the Ravens drew within 3, but now the Kansas City Chiefs get Xavier Worthy, the rookie, into the end zone for the second time tonight. So Xavier Worthy out of Texas, the fastest man at the NFL Combine, the fastest 40 dash in NFL Combine history. I was there to see that in Indianapolis this past year. He just had a walk-in touchdown, his second of the night, and the Chiefs look like they're about to go back up 10. Steven, really good question. OG Knockout says, what's good, Pat? As long as Daniel Jones is quarterback of the Giants, I can't watch anymore. Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones are basically the same QB. Look up the stats and it will tell you everything. OG, it's interesting you put it that way about, can't watch anymore because, I know exactly where you stand on Daniel Jones. You've always made that very clear. But I find it very interesting what this one game means for Daniel Jones, right? Just the fact that the difference between him going out and throwing 2 touchdowns in the first half versus going out and throwing an interception in the first 2 drives, right? Like, think about how differently this game and potentially the season could play out if just those 2 scenarios go one way or another. Because the crowd, not all the crowd, but a lot of the crowd feels the way you do, right? Then there's a portion of the crowd that says, hey, he's our quarterback. We got to stay behind him. We got to believe in him. It's either him or this season's going in the dumps. And that side is right in that respect too. But I just find it so fascinating how much is connected to, a bad mistake, a big mistake early from Daniel in a game like this, what that could mean for Brian Daboll, what that could mean for Daniel Jones, what that could mean for Joe Schoen and the organization. I really think it could be a fun, great day at MetLife Stadium on Sunday, or it could get ugly fast, right? The Giants, of course, haven't put Daniel Jones on the field in front of their fans since last season's injury, right? The only time he played this year was their second game in Houston on the road. So this is going to be the first time he's playing in front of the Giants' full stadium of fans. So really fascinating dynamic that we're about to see play out here. Steven also says, Pat, when drafting a quarterback, how much do you think that the organization and situation factor in development? For example, if the Giants drafted Josh Allen, would he be the quarterback he is today, and vice versa with the Bills and Daniel Jones? Great question, Steven. It's impossible to say that it doesn't have an effect. I think Bo Nix, Sean Payton, for example, right now. I watched Bo Nix several times in person in the off season during the scouting process. At no point did I think he looked very good. But we saw his college career. We saw him at Oregon. We saw how many passes he threw, all of his production there. He goes to Denver, and suddenly the news coming out of there is, whoa, sounds like this kid looks pretty good. Sounds like Sean Payton has him moving up the depth chart. Now he's the starting quarterback. Could he have had the same amount of success if he went to how many, or let's put it this way. How many of the 31 other organizations could Bo Nix have gone to and had the same early development and developmental curve and success as he's had under Sean Payton leading up into the regular season? I think you could answer that question too, which is that what we know the answer is it's certainly not all of them, right? It's certainly not all of them. I think mostly at this point, Steven, you look at some of these offensive coaches, Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel down in Miami, Sean Payton in Denver, right? Those are just some I'm just throwing out there. Offensive coaches who call plays and have a track record of developing or enhancing quarterback talents, right? And I just think those types of coaches don't necessarily grow on trees. And it is a thing, Steven, that going to an organization and a situation factors in. Another good example would be maybe Daniel Jones. Like, for example, this year, the fact that everyone's pointing out accurately, like that this is by far the best skill position group receivers wise that Daniel Jones has worked with in his NFL career. And it's taken how many years since he was selected in 2019 for that to occur? His best weapon the entire time has been a running back largely. Obviously, Darius Slayton's been a very good player with him, but Saquon Barkley, the running back, has been his primary weapon up until this point. Now, if Daniel Jones goes to a place where, for example, Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs a couple years into his career there, would Daniel Jones's career have taken off a little bit more at that point versus waiting for this year, the defined, pivotal make or break year to have a number one, but he's a 21-year-old who is playing in his first NFL game in one of Daniel Jones' biggest gains of his NFL career. Situations do matter. Organizations and their support of that quarterback do matter. I don't think if Daniel Jones was in Buffalo with Brian Daboll those years, I think having a Stephon Diggs would have helped. I don't think, Brian Daboll develops Daniel Jones into Josh Allen in that scenario. I mean, we've literally now seen Daboll coach Daniel Jones, and they're still trying to turn him into that type of quarterback or have him blossom into that kind of quarterback. Had some success in 2022, but a lot of it obviously was focused on the run. So I hope that answers your question, but yes, the answer is yes. Situation and organization factor big time. Another great example would be Drake May of the New England Patriots right now. He gets drafted by New England instead of them trading back and letting the Giants take him. Now in New England, Drake May, I saw him in that preseason game when Jacoby Brissett got hurt. He came in earlier than he was expected to, and Drake May looked good, right? But what was concerning about watching him in that game? He had offensive linemen stepping on his feet, getting run over, free rushers coming at him. And it looks like the kind of season where if Drake May does play ample snaps for the New England Patriots, he's going to be in a position where it's going to be tough sledding. It's going to be tough for him to stay healthy. It's not an ideal situation, and that's putting it mildly, for a rookie quarterback to go into. So, Steven, I think it'd be fair to say that if you and I wanted to put a bet right now on which quarterback, even with J.J. McCarthy's knee injury that has him out for the season, if you and I were to put a bet right now on which quarterback was going to have a better developmental curve and more success, J.J. McCarthy, despite that injury, with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, or Drake May in New England with Gerard Mayo as head coach, who would you take, right? And regardless, I think, of what you think of each player, McCarthy and May, I think it's pretty obvious the answer is McCarthy because of the situation he's going into. Because of the situation he's going into with that coach and with that offense. All right. Nice swig of water there. I got my Estate 98 coffee over here. Remember, estate98.com/Talkin Ball. Special buy one, get one free deal on a delicious coffee. It's good iced or hot. Also sponsored here by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to reduce inflammation and improve immune and heart health with its beta glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. So that's boomchaga.com. Go to the subscribe and save order. Order one with the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard code, Talkin Ball 25, or the QR code that you see here on your screen, and you'll get 25% off. That's a great way, the best way right now to support the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel and podcast here on the Believe Network is to buy a bag of Boom Chaga and try it out. Have seen some sales rolling in and really appreciate that from everybody. Chronicles actually asks after he got a second straight trivia question correct. I will send you my address. Do I get 2 bottles of Estate 98 now? Yes, of course you do, Gabe. You got last chat's question correct first, and you got this one correct first. So you get 2 bottles of Estate 98 coffee coming your way. You didn't send me that address yet, so the first one didn't go out, but that's actually good now because 2 will be coming in that package. And so you'll get a month's supply of Estate 98 coffee, Gabe. Congratulations. Roldy, what's going on? Great to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being in the chat. Drop those questions in there. Would love to answer whatever you have going on, whatever you want to know about this team and about this matchup. OG says, Pat, I know Daniel Jones hasn't had the best O-line with his time with the Giants, but if you look at the year Eli Manning won his last Super Bowl, the line was good enough. Look it up. So I looked it up. The line ranked 31st in 2011, and Eli Manning and that defense still won the Super Bowl. Yeah, not always fair to compare everything to guys who win Super Bowls when really we're just looking for a quarterback in Daniel Jones here to make, just to make consistent plays and win games. But your point is taken, OG. Your point holds, and that reinforces kind of what we were saying earlier, which is, as Barb was saying, it is hard to survive behind a bad O-line for a lot of quarterbacks, for most quarterbacks. But if you want to be a top quarterback, if you want to be somebody that an organization can plant their flag and say, this guy is our franchise quarterback, then, you need to, at times, overcome your team's deficiencies, your line's deficiencies, a broken play, and you just need to make a play yourself. Hunter Keller says, what is a realistic season for Malik Neighbors? Hunter, I think so Garrett Wilson, for example, Garrett Wilson's first 2 seasons. All right. I like looking at his stats here because this is a player who's played with, less than ideal quarterback situation so far, right? But has been a great talent, an exciting talent, clearly a great player, right? So he's had 83 catches for 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns, and 95 catches for 1,042 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, I think if Malik Neighbors plays a full season, it is definitely realistic for him to get to that catch range, to get to the 90 catch range, to get to, 1,200, 1,300 yards, and to get to 6 touchdowns, right? Like, I think that's a reasonable expectation. I mean, one thing, maybe we're underselling him here. I mean, one thing that stood out to me in that preseason game in Houston was that the Giants offense started with a sputter. Obviously, they had the pick 6. They had another interception. By the end of the first half, Neighbors still had something like 5 or 6 catches for 56 yards or 58 yards or something crazy like that. So that told me that, this guy could get his, even if the situation is not ideal, he could still end up with some pretty big numbers. Hunter says, is Theo Johnson, the rookie tight end out of Penn State, going to be the main tight end target for us this year, or is it by committee? I do think he will be the most commonly thrown to tight end in the passing game, Hunter. I think you're right about that. But they are all going to be used and utilized on the field, it appears. That top 3 of Chris Manhertz, Theo Johnson, and Daniel Bellinger. You'll see them in the backfield providing max protect. in certain situations. You'll see them in the backfield and then moving back in line. You'll see plenty of 2 tight end sets with with 2 guys on the field at once, one chipping and going out on a route, one just running a route, or both staying in the block for Daniel Jones to take a deep shot. Definitely heavier personnel, I think, coming on offense from what we've seen from the Giants, particularly probably in this game, specifically to address and handle and counter what Brian Flores is going to throw at them. One thing I think that stands out to me coming out of this week so far, and we still have one more Giants to practice to go as we sit here on September 5th and talk about Giants-Vikings previewing week 1. But Brian Daboll made a point several times the other day when he was talking about Flores' defense of mentioning that this is not the same Vikings defense we played 2 years ago. It was like he wanted everybody to know, I know everybody remembers us scoring a ton of points against the Vikings 2 years ago, but it's probably going to be a little more difficult this time around. So I thought that really cracked me up. But it is true. It is going to be more difficult. Flores knows Brian Daboll well and also is a very good coach. So it is going to be tough on him. And then, but yeah, to answer your question, Theo Johnson, I think main tight end target in the passing game. King Chris says Theo, I think, is a sleeper pick. Yeah, you know, he was showing towards the end of training camp and the preseason, Theo Johnson in the second half, I would say, he was really struggling with drops. He was dropping passes, you know, maybe a little bit of a rookie wall as far as the workload he was handling. So, you know, they have some rest days here leading up to week 1. So we'll see how that goes. But, you know, some hands issues from Theo Johnson late in the preseason and in camp. We'll see if that crops up again or not. But definitely something to watch there. Chris says Daniel Jones needs to watch Patrick Mahomes' film after this game tonight. Well, Mahomes, the thing about Mahomes is that he just marries his understanding of the game to his physical abilities to the point where he just plays the position differently than anybody else. Like that's the part of it, is like he's unique both mentally and physically. Chris also says we lost the Bills game because of that missed pass interference call. No, Chris, come on. I mean, you know, that did look like a call that, you know, should have been made, right? I totally agree with you on that. But let's be honest here. At the end of the first half, where the Giants get down on the goal line and end up, the clock runs out with them getting no points. Like that type of situational football mistake, right? Like that's how you lose games, right? Like those types of things, tight games, close games. The defense basically had Josh Allen and the Bills in a blender for most of the game, and the Giants could barely score. What was it, 14-7? So yeah, no, that was, I hear you on the missed call, but that wasn't why they lost. The end of the first half is why they lost. Let's see. Isaiah Likely is nice. Yes, he is. Let's see. Evan, what's going on, Evan? Great to see you. He says, hey, Pat, is there a good chance the secondary can create some turnovers? Evan, Tyler Nubin, I think, gives them a chance to be pretty good at that. You know, he is a rookie, so there'll be some growing pains there as well. But he does take the football away. He did that as a, I believe, 5-year player in college at Minnesota for the Golden Gophers. You know, that said, you know, Jason Pinnock is more of an athletic blitzer than now he did have a pick six, right? For 106 yards or 103 yards in Miami. So he can be a ball hawk at times, but you know, he has not shown himself to be the type of ball hawk that, say, like Xavier McKinney was when he was healthy, or like he was in that 2 interception game against the Eagles last year. Right. And then Deonte Banks can make plays on the ball. But you'd like to see more of that. And also at the other cornerback position, I actually think Nick McLeod, I think the Giants secondary should give Shane Bowen should give him opportunities in coverage. Like if you throw a 50-50 ball to Nick McLeod, he's long. He's a big, long corner with instincts when the ball is in the air. I think he can go win those. I think he deserves that chance. I think he should start in this game. That's my opinion. I think he deserves it. But Evan, to be totally honest with you, going up against Sam Darnold, a guy who will give the football away if you confuse him and pressure him, I think that it'll really depend on the Giants' front four and their pass rush. I think if they get to him and they speed Darnold's decision making up and they get him off his spot, then I think you're talking about secondary forcing turnovers and those guys kind of jumping the ball and finding their way to the football, turnovers, and setting up the offense in favorable situations. If they don't pressure Darnold, then I think it'll be harder. They'll play more zone this year than they did last year, and I think they're going to be in more positions to be looking at the ball in front of them and keeping the ball in front of them rather than in man-to-man situations. But you know, if Bowen can disguise coverages well enough, that's one thing we don't know. That's an unanswered question. An unanswered question is whether Bowen can disguise and attack schematically also to give those guys that type of advantage. Omega says, thank you. Gotta go. As always, love the show. Thank you so much, Omega, for being here. And thanks for saying that. Really appreciate that. Let's see. OG says Daniel Jones hasn't thrown 3 touchdowns in a game since his rookie year. Good luck with that. Steven says, God, Sunday has to be better than week 1 last year. Left pretty much after halftime. Yeah, no, that was an all-time stinker, that game. So I agree with you. Let's see. Hunter says Lamar is so fun to watch, especially healthy. There is no doubt. I totally agree with you there. There's nobody like him. Let's see. OG thinks the Giants should get Hendon Hooker and still draft a quarterback in 2025. Looks like the Lions like what they see in Hooker as a developmental backup, though, as well. Hunter says the Bills game still would have had to score. That Bills game still would have had to score the TD to win it. Yes, exactly, for sure. And really, it's just about that the point about those close games was more about situational football and about an understanding of how those key moments, if you lack execution in those moments, it costs you. It means wins and losses, because the reality of the situation in the NFL and for the Giants too, especially teams like the Giants and even a team like the Vikings on Sunday, these are teams that are going to play in a lot of low scoring close games. And so, the 1 or 2 key big decisions or plays, whether it's a mistake, whether it's a turnover, whether it's a penalty, or it's winning a one-on-one battle, all of that is going to, those little things, those 1 or 2 seemingly little things, those are going to decide these games. And so, that's something to keep in mind when you evaluate Brian Daboll and you evaluate how he's operating on the sideline and what type of job he's doing, both as a play caller and as a head coach. When it comes to putting the Giants in the best position to win, because the fact of the matter is, the first season, the way that Daboll and Martindale schemed games to, let's say, attack opponents' weaknesses and also conceal their own and play to their own strengths, that was a major part of why they made the playoffs, why they started 6-1, why Daboll won Coach of the Year. But last year, and even starting in that playoff game in Philadelphia the year before, a lot of concerning kind of trends and mistakes and moves developing in those moments. And I think from Daboll's end, like from an evaluating the coach standpoint, and let's be honest, this coach is being evaluated under a microscope right now organizationally, just like the quarterback is at the moment. That's something that Daboll really needs to get a handle on and needs to improve in this season. Evan says Daboll has to be a smart coach like he was in 2022. Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing, Evan, that I'm really interested in monitoring is, Shane Bowen. We know he wasn't the Giants' first choice as defensive coordinator. We do know he has Brian Burns added, but lack of depth at inside linebacker, some concerns at corner, and a lot of youth on that defense, right? He's got some high-end talent and players, but, Martindale augmented a defensive unit that was lacking in certain areas in personnel. Okay. So can Bowen do that? Because as a coach, like listen, if you have great players, usually people think you're a better coach than when you have bad players and they see your product on the field. So having great players or good players helps for sure. But, you're going to get exposed in the NFL if you're not somebody who is on the attack or at least um, able to anticipate and cater your game plan to a specific opponent and kind of put them at a disadvantage, right? Attack their weaknesses, like the way that we've seen teams in the past. There have been times when the Giants have had um, a pretty good defense, and then the slot corner is not a great player, and the offense comes right out. They see him there, and they throw it to the slot receiver for a 12-yard gain, right? Like, it only takes one weakness out of 11 on the field for the offense to attack you and exploit you. So, you're right. Is Daboll, but not just Daboll, but his staff, he and Bowen, and that game plan, it needs to be buttoned up. It needs to be tight. It needs to be together. They need to complement each other, and they need to be on the same page about how they can win this game. There has to be a governing philosophy when they walk into a game like this of how we intend to win it. That's what they need. Hunter says, I'm kind of shocked Bills didn't try to get Isaiah Hodgins back this year after we cut him on cutdown day. I was surprised about that as well, Hunter. Guy who can make touchdown catches, right? Barb says, couldn't be happier. Mike Kafka is no longer calling plays. Well, that's interesting, Barb. So, Barb, what did you not like about Kafka's play calling? What do you think Daboll will be better at as a play caller than Kafka? Because to me, I'm sure there were situations that, we know there were situations where Daboll took play calling away because he didn't like how it was going. He felt like he could do it better. Gave it to Shea Tierney in Dallas. So definitely, obviously, the coach was upset with some of that play calling and with the offense and was trying to take it into his own hands at times, plenty of times. But I'm curious, specifically in this matchup, for example, they could go out against a Vikings team that they scored a ton of points on in the playoffs in Minnesota. And what if they go out today or this week on Sunday, week 1 of 2024, and only score 13 or 14 or 17 points, with Brian Daboll calling plays? I think as much as Daboll got this job because he was a play caller, as much as Brian Daboll, his bread and butter is play calling, as much as we know that it's really what he enjoys doing best, it's how he connects best to the team, to the players, and all that. Do we know that in this current dynamic as the head coach with this personnel, do we know that that's going to augment and improve the team? Well, it needs to, right? They have no choice. Daboll has no choice. And I've said many times before, I don't blame him at all for taking play calling over full time this time, because frankly, with your job on the line, you got to lean into what you do best. You got to lean into what you think will make the best case to save your job. Of course, not good precedent in how he handled everything last year with the coaching staff. Obviously, a surprise that Kafka's even still here based on how Daboll handled it and handled him. But now they walk into week 1 with the head coach calling the plays, Kafka up in the box, and not even fully clear what all of his game day duties and responsibilities are. Of course, he's complimenting Daboll on kind of identifying how the Vikings are playing them and working with other people up in the box, including, there's always some scouting presences up in the box with the coaches there as well, charting and evaluating and kind of tracking what the Giants are running, what the Vikings are running on defense. And so they can try to situationally in the second half pivot off of that. So there's kind of game monitoring and, kind of stat tracking and things like that going on, but still not extremely clear what exactly Kafka is doing, what his primary responsibility is on game day, now that Daboll is the primary play caller. Of course, Kafka had never been on the sideline. He's always been he was always calling plays from up top, but it's interesting that now, even not calling plays, he's still not down on the sideline. Let's see. Hunter says Mahomes just maybe saved the game. Pass got batted down and he caught it. It would have been maybe 6 the other way. Yeah. Now, as we speak, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are driving to try to tie the game. Under 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, 27-20, Kansas City, and Baltimore with a 2nd and 2 at their own 21. Lamar back to pass, flushed right, scrambles right, gets past the edge, gains a first down, and does a spin move out of bounds just inside the 35-yard line for a first. So Baltimore on the move. Exciting stuff. Talkin Ball live, Thursday Night Football. Week 1 is here. We got Eagles Packers coming up in Brazil, Sao Paulo. And by the way, how about that story with Darius Slayton, Giants wide receiver, going on social media, on X, on Instagram, and telling people to leave him alone because he's not Darius Slay, he's Darius Slayton. Clearly, he's getting a lot of hateful messages from people in Brazil because Darius Slay, the Eagles corner, said on a podcast that he wasn't excited about going to Brazil because the Eagles have been told basically stay in your hotel. Don't don't go walking with your cell phones out in your hand in the streets. Maybe don't go out at night, things like that. And so looked like a lot of hate was going the Darius Slayton route on social media. So the Giants receiver trying to say, please chill out and get out of my mentions. So that was pretty funny to see Slayton kind of point that out on social media. Hunter says, for us to show improvement, where do we need to be in terms of scoring offense? No lower than top 20 or top 15, or what is the bar to keep their jobs? Hunter, I think on offense, the way that they show improvement, how much improvement do they have to show? Here's what I would say. If you're consistently competitive, that is an improvement from where they were last year. So last year, we know, I think it was something like they scored 2 offensive touchdowns in like a 5 or 6 or 7 week window, something crazy like that, where the offense was just never scoring touchdowns. They got a couple defensive touchdowns. They got some field goals. They were shut out by the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, they had the Arizona game sprinkled in there, but by and large, it was something like 5 straight losses with 2 total touchdowns in those 5 losses, I think it was. Lamar Jackson flush back to pass. He's rolling. He's scrambling. He gains another first down and makes 2 Chiefs crash into each other trying to tackle him. He's like Gumby out there, man. It's insane. You know what's crazy? Lamar Jackson, the only person I've ever seen move like him on a football field is Kadarius Toney. Like when you see Kadarius run and make people miss and how he jukes, the only other person who does that is Lamar. Like it's hard to explain. It's almost like a fluidity to their suddenness, if that makes sense. And it's also like a slipperiness that allows them to go into traffic, but not take a big hit necessarily. Now, Lamar is better at that than Kadarius. And obviously, Kadarius can never stay on the field, always has injuries, right? But, that quality, it was just always so interesting to me that a player who did not, come to fruition as a first-round pick for the Giants and I believe is still a free agent, right? The Chiefs cut him, and then the Seattle Seahawks brought him in for a workout, but didn't sign him, I believe. Interesting story, actually. Kadarius Toney, I was in the Chiefs locker room after they won the Super Bowl, and Kadarius was sitting there at his locker dressed because he was a healthy scratch for that game. And I said hi to him. He said hi to me, but I asked him if he would talk. He declined an interview. And then I find out from some people texting me that as I'm standing feet away from him talking to somebody else, he just went live on Instagram and was, talking trash and saying stuff and defending himself. And so there I was trying to get the quotes, but he preferred to just go on Instagram and do it. But, the year before when they won the Super Bowl, he was very gracious. And he was a big part of that. He was very gracious in the locker room after that, talking about it. So I was grateful to him for that. Was obviously in a difficult position last year, but super awkward to be in a winning Super Bowl locker room and not really appear to be in a good mood, right? That's pretty weird. Let's see. Hunter says, Mahomes just maybe, let's say he said that already. He said, Pat, I want you to call a game on Fox NFL someday. I'd rather listen to you than Joe Buck. I appreciate that. Mr. Keller. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Hey, I can do some play-by-play. I used to do like high school play-by-play in Philadelphia, some St. Joe's prep football, Strider says, yo, Pat, just got back. Excited for week 1. Been dealing with 100-degree, I guess, fever for almost a week, and it won't end until Tuesday. 100 degrees out in, okay. Today was 115 degrees in California? No way. Come on. Strider, are you kidding me? 115 degrees? Dealing with 100-degree heat for almost a week, and it won't end till Tuesday. My goodness. Wow. It's interesting. It's just starting to be fallish here in New Jersey. Oh man, the Ravens are in the red zone, under 20 seconds to play. Lamar just missed Likely in the end zone. Incomplete. Likely's now down and banged up. Oh man, Likely looks like he's hurt. He might have separated his shoulder or something. Bad news there. Oh man, 10 seconds left. Ravens down 7. Isaiah Likely writhing on the turf right now. Don't like to see that. Wow, what a catch by Rashad Bateman to get them down there too. Holy cow. Great finish here for Chiefs Ravens. So Strider, yeah, really excited. He says, let's see what Strider says. He says, I hope Daniel Jones has a good season. For me, Pat, Daniel Jones can't play scared. He can't be scared to make mistakes. As long as he stays aggressive and plays fearless, I am fine. Yeah, Strider, you know what it is? He does play aggressively by nature, and his default is to play aggressively. What happens is if he gets confused or tricked by a coverage or by a scheme, or he gets pressured and into a different type of read or decision than he was expecting, and he hesitates, that's when it looks like he's, like, as you described, playing scared. It's not scared. It's kind of like a panicked indecision. It's making the wrong decision in the moment as he's flustered, if that makes sense. So I know you and I are talking about the same thing, but I always tell people, like, who don't watch him a lot, like, if they say, what do you think of Jones, or what should I be looking for? I'll say, when you watch him drop back to pass, if you see him hitch, right? If he looks at a wide receiver and he hitches or he pulls the ball down, he looks, and then he starts kind of hesitating and turning and kind of stuttering his feet, right? Then the play, look out. It could get ugly. It could get bad. It could get worrisome for the Giants. It could be a turnover, right? Those types of things. When he can drop back, plant his foot in the ground, and rip it with that aggressive confidence that you're describing, he's a good player, and he's the player that they feel like should be worth that $40 million that they paid. Oh my goodness. Lamar just threw a pass right past an open Zay Flowers. Flowers didn't sit in the end zone, and Lamar Jackson thought, I guess he was going to sit, but Flowers kept running. As we do this Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard here on the Believe Network on YouTube. Oh my goodness. He completely missed him. He just completely missed him. Oh, brutal miss. Holy cow. Brutal miss. Usually, if you miss a layup like that, you don't make it the next time. The Ravens do have more time on the clock, 5 seconds left. Usually, though, if you have a bunny and you miss it, you're not getting another chance. It's like in basketball. You miss a layup, you still get your own rebound, but now when you go back up, there's somebody waiting for you to block it into the seats, right? All right, there he is, back to pass. He's stuttering. Chris Jones pressuring him. He throws into the end zone, and it's caught for a touchdown. Holy cow. Isaiah Likely back on the field after getting hurt 2 plays ago, catches a touchdown in the back of the end zone, and Harbaugh is saying they're going for 2. Harbaugh is saying that the Ravens are going for the win here after Likely caught this touchdown. What a catch. What a throw. Wow. It looks like he's toe tapping right against the line. What a finish here in Kansas City to open the NFL season. Man, what a game. What a sport. Love it. All right. Let's get to the next question. A2Z me, what's up? Good to see you. Says another midnight chat. Let's go. A2, thanks for being here. No Mets, what's going on? Great to see you. No Mets says chat, what's up? Yep, no doubt. Let's see. What else do we got here? Hunter says, I can't believe Daniel Jones is the only NFC quarterback to beat Lamar. Well, and also think of it this way. The only defensive coordinator to beat Lamar Jackson in the NFC was Wink Martindale, right? Likely's toe is out of bounds on the replay. I don't think it's going to count. It's not going to stand. The Ravens are going to lose. Oh my goodness. Brutal. Brutal for Baltimore. What's he going to say? Yeah, out of bounds. Yep, game over. Chiefs win. Oh my goodness. What a finish. All right, let's see. Hunter says when this talking ball blows up like crazy, you're going to be calling games with Brady. Hunter, I hope so, man. From your lips to God's ears, as they say. No real NFL teams. Yeah, you know what it is? It starts with the quarterback position and having elite playmakers at QB, right? That's where it starts. And then with those elite playmakers at quarterback, uh, then you can overcome deficiencies, right? Like they showed a stat tonight that Jawan Taylor from the Chiefs was penalized something like 17 times last night or last season, and it was the highest of any player in the NFL. They won the Super Bowl, right? So Jawan Taylor, most penalties of any player in the NFL last season individually was their starting right tackle, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So to your point about looking like real NFL teams, I always tell people about this. I always say this to people about like Lamar Jackson and about a lot of the better players, better quarterbacks, MVP candidates, etc. They don't play perfectly. They just make the plays to win, right? So like Mahomes threw a bad interception tonight, but he scored 27 points and his team won, right? So like Daniel Jones in his career, there've been games he's made mistakes, but has also made plays and won. But like usually too often when the Giants make mistakes, it snowballs. When Jones makes mistakes, it snowballs. You can't let it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. If you make a mistake, you can bounce back from it. But the Giants haven't shown an ability to do that. Jones hasn't shown an ability to do that enough, right? So hopefully they can. Let's see. Yeah, you can only wish the Giants look half as good, says No Mets. Yep, no doubt. Yep, looking forward to a fun game on Sunday. Strider says, I also feel like Daniel Jones does go through his progressions, but it's not fast enough at times. He has to know if a player is open. Pull the trigger. Yeah, it's one of those things, Strider, where Dable sometimes, or Kafka in the past, whatever, sometimes they have schemed him in a way where you can see where the read is, where it's going. And it's like Daniel knows exactly where to throw the ball, what the defense is going to be, and where it's going to be open and why and when. But, it can't always be them scheming the defense, into a disadvantage. The quarterback has to put the defense at a disadvantage with his play. A2Z Me says play by play Pat. I like that nickname. Yeah, let's go. That was a crazy finish though. That was awesome. Let's see. Barb says the Ravens are never going to beat Kansas City. They have to feel like that at this point, right? After that brutal way to lose, says No Mets, no doubt. Strider says, Pat, be honest. I know it's early. If Daniel Jones doesn't have a good season, do you think he'll be back? No, definitely not. I think Strider that it's trending, very strongly to him not being their quarterback next season. I think we talked earlier in the chat about, I know you popped in out of the heat, and I hope you're cooling off now out there in Cali, Strider, coming back from that. But I think that, Joe Shane's comment to Ryan Poles on Hard Knocks with the Bears, he didn't intend for that to be public on a hot mic, but his comment to Ryan Poles there getting public, that reinforces what the Giants organization really is thinking, or what the general manager at least is really thinking about the quarterback, right? They are aiming to replace him. They do not believe at this moment that they can sit there and say confidently, looking in someone's face, we have the quarterback position solved. Now, of course, easy to say that, but you paid the guy $40 million on a contract extension. So it's not like you hadn't adjudged previously that he was this type of player, right? So they did pay him. They did believe in him. They did put their faith behind him. But in the end, we see, based on, of course, the structure of the contract gives them the out after 2 years, but also those comments they've made recently, Strider. Plus, they're out there scouting quarterbacks again already. All points to the fact that, Daniel Jones's time in New York is short at the moment if he does not play out of his mind this season and validate that contract. Nomad says, look how Lamar had to play and they still lost. Daniel Jones not making plays consistently. Let's see. Strider says, do you also think Daniel Jones will have some sort of success running the ball? The reason why he had 700 yards rushing was because of Saquon Barkley. We won a lot of the games because Barkley was running well. I think that's a great point. I do not think Daniel will be able to get outside and run the same way as he did in 2022 when they had Barkley as that running back option. I do agree with that, Strider. I think there was so much focus on Saquon. And that's why I really do think people are, it's a wait and see approach about how this offense is going to look and how they're going to be defended. But I think it's a great point you make there, which is, teams had to stack the box against Saquon Barkley and the Giants. Teams had to pay attention to number 26. In fact, to me, looking at them letting Saquon Barkley sign in Philadelphia and draft Malik Neighbors, forget about whether you wanted Barkley or you didn't, whether you wanted him gone or you wanted him re-signed, whatever, or your opinion of him as a player. The fact that he attracts defense's attention and attracts more numbers down into the box is critical, because if you add Malik Neighbors and you also have that running back there, Saquon Barkley, in the backfield, you can hopefully continue to unlock Daniel Jones as a runner and also force the defense to make a decision on either your running back or your receiver, right? Instead of adding Neighbors to Saquon, they replaced Saquon with Neighbors as a top weapon. So you're not putting defenses in the same kind of conflict that you would have been if you kept 26 with, I guess now he's number 1 on the field on the outside. So that, to me, from a team building standpoint, from a standpoint of, Daniel Jones, are we giving him everything, the best chance to succeed? Like, to me, that would have been the best chance to succeed. A2Z Me says, I have no real expectations from the Giants this year, mostly because our quarterback one is still a question mark, like painting the exterior of the house when the foundation needs work. Still excited though. Let's go. Yeah. How do you guys see this game working out on Sunday? Do you think the Giants will win this game against the Minnesota Vikings, or are you expecting them to lose to a Vikings team that has Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, right? Some good players, but that is quarterbacked by Sam Darnold? Curious what you guys think. Let's see. Strider says, you are correct. If we somehow kept Barkley, defenses would need to rethink about stacking the box. I totally agree. Yeah. And Strider, that comment is based on talking to people around the league throughout these years that the Giants have been facing, teams around the league, about how they were defending them, how you could attack them, how the Giants were attacking them. Like, there were teams that, even when the Giants were a bad team, you would hear from teams about how hard Dexter Lawrence was to stop on the interior of the offensive line, how tough Saquon Barkley was to handle, and how he gave them fits, and how he would be the best player on the field in a lot of games when they would face him and things like that. And so, that's something to remember. That's something to note. Yeah. By the way, I'm getting texts similar to yours. Who was it? Hunter earlier, or somebody earlier said, can't believe that the Giants beat Baltimore 2 years ago with Lamar Jackson. That is definitely a thought crossing a lot of people's minds watching this game. How did the Giants do that? Mark says, Pat, what would Daniel Jones have to do to remain Giants quarterback in 2025 in terms of stats and or wins? Is he out no matter what? No, I mean, listen, as much as clearly the GM is still out on the road looking for his replacement and the pressure is on internally in general, John Mara and ownership, like, they believe in Daniel Jones. They paid Daniel Jones. They're not giving him $40 million years just to wait till next season to draft somebody. Like, if he has a good season, Mark, then he's not going anywhere, right? What exactly does it need to look like? I think being in competition for a playoff spot in December. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're winning 9 or 10 games, but I think it means being in a position going into December where the Giants feel good about their offense and they feel like they have a chance to compete for a postseason spot down the stretch. That's what I think he needs to do. I think if it falls short of that and it's, you know, rough season where you win some games late to finish with 6 or 7 wins, or, um, up and down where there's like last season, the first 2 weeks, right? Dallas 40-0 loss where the offense looks inept and the team looks inept. And then the next week, you have this incredible half of football and you score 31 points and you win. They don't want to see up and down and up and down and up and down, right? Because we know that ultimately, and this doesn't go for the Giants, this goes for any team out there. I mean, if you get a lack of consistency and you go from good to horrendous football and back and forth, like that's not a recipe for success. That's not what you need from your franchise quarterback, right? So as far as stats goes, Mark, I think you need to see a significant amount of touchdown passes, right? You need to see him increase his touchdown passes while not increasing the turnover numbers, right? The fumbles in the pocket when he was younger, all those fumbles as he was standing back there when he was throwing more touchdowns, but staying back there and taking more hits. From a stat standpoint, let's look at his career numbers, and I can give you a kind of a better point. I think the win total, I would say they to me, I think they would have to at least be around 500. With Daniel Jones playing well. Like, let's say he plays well and they're 500 in part because their young defense is really struggling. Like, that's obviously one way that he could still stick around even if they don't have a great record. So yeah, his stats so far. So rookie year, 3,000 yards, 24 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions. The next year, 2,900 yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. The next year, 2,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The next year, 3,200 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And then last year, of course, got hurt. So it only ends up with 909, 2 touchdown passes in 6 games. Okay. 2 touchdown passes in 6 games and 6 interceptions. I think by and large, like, he obviously, based on his numbers, he's only been over 15 touchdown passes in a season one time. I think you're looking at a quarterback who you need him to be. Ideally, I think you'd like him in that, 25 touchdown passes, 10 or under interception range. I think that's asking a lot based on what we've seen from him and from the Giants offense in his career, right? It sounds unfair, but like that's true based on the numbers we just read out loud. As we were talking about earlier, Daniel Jones had obviously a lot of rushing success 2 years ago with 120 attempts, 708 yards, and 7 touchdown rushes in that playoff season. I do think their offense is going to have more of the, run-based kind of drag route to wide receivers element. I do think, as much as there's been so much talk about pushing the ball down the field, I do think they're going to try to replicate some of the 2022 strengths that they were able to generate, because I do think Daniel Jones, you heard Tim McDonald say it himself in that Hard Knocks episode, Daniel Jones needs a running game, right? And, most quarterbacks do, but Daniel Jones needs a running game. So I think a running game, both from your running backs and also from him himself. But let's come up with a number that would be good. I'd say, basically, so in 2022, with the 7 rushing touchdowns and the 15 passing, he had 22 TDs. I think like that shows you that. And that, listen, that was not a really good offense either, right? That was still a low scoring offense that was supported by a really good defense. And so I think you're looking at a minimum, to say that he had a good season, I think you're looking at a minimum 25 touchdown passes. But obviously, if he gets to 20, that's high for what his career has been. But I think you'd say 25 touchdown passes, hopefully getting to 30 total, including rushing, or in that area, and then keeping the turnovers down while you're doing that, and this is just answering your question about what stats you'd like to see for him to kind of validate, right? Strider thinks the Giants will beat the Vikings, but Flores, their defensive coordinator from the Vikings, will bring pressure. He's aggressive. Not like Wink, but he's aggressive. Michael says Jones will throw 5 picks. So both people seeing pressure and both people seeing it working out differently. No Met says QB1 is not a question. Daniel Jones isn't the answer. Evan says it's going to be a close game. I can't remember the last time the Giants won a home game in their opener. Giants 21, Vikings 17. Yeah, it's funny you say that, Evan, because I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but I was reading off some interesting stats, and the Giants are actually 0-5 in their last 5 week 1 games at MetLife Stadium. They have not won a week 1 game at MetLife Stadium since 2010 against the Carolina Panthers. That is really a heck of a streak. They're 4-10 in home openers at MetLife Stadium. So that's your answer. I agree. It's going to be around that area. I think the pick I made on Mike Wobskull's podcast was 21-20 Vikings, which actually be really tricky because on a lot of sites, it's 1.5 and 41.5 for the spread and the over under. So if the Vikings won by 1, the Giants would cover and the under would hit. So that would be a very tricky, not a very fair prediction for me, but that's a possibility. Let's see. Right. Julian Love in the first and the interception. That's how they beat Baltimore. No doubt. Let's see. I expect the Giants to win, which means they'll probably lose the game and lose ugly, says No Mets. Michael says if our O-line holds up, we will win and our D-line gets pressure. Yeah, I agree that pressure from the defense is extremely key. I think the pressure from the defense is the deal. And that's why I think getting Minnesota behind in the game, forcing Darnold to drop back more than Kevin O'Connell would like, putting them in obvious passing situations. I think you have to try to force it into your D-line dictating the game. If you can't do that and you're trailing and they're able to run the ball a lot and control it and your offense isn't moving the ball, then that's the recipe for losing. Let's see. By the way, one thing I wanted to note, Tyrone Tracy, running back, all the running backs really, I do think are going to factor into the return game. Kick returns, maybe punt returns as well at times. Like we saw in the preseason, a lot of the running backs doing kick returns. There was Devin Singletary back there. There was Turbo Miller back there at times. Tyrone Tracy got some run, and Eric Gray as well. Listening to Michael Gabriel, the special teams coordinator, he mentioned like running backs' ability to be natural runners and break arm tackles. So I do think running backs, as well as, of course, we know Gunnar Olszewski's in there as the punt returner if he's playing and available. And, you have to imagine him factoring as well in the kick return game, possibly at times as well. But I do think look for running backs to factor in the return game. Tyrone Tracy, possibly in punts down the line. We will see. Let's see. Hunter says, I wish he had another year with Shurmur on Daniel Jones. Yeah, you almost wish Pat Shurmur, offensive coordinator, not head coach. Mark says, thank you, Pat. Grateful for your reportage. Always appreciate your observations. All the best to you this season. Same to you, Mark. Thank you so much for saying that. Evan says 2010 Giants won their last home opener against the Panthers. That's right. Exactly right. Nice research there, Evan. Let's see. Figo says, why can't Giants look like good teams for once? That's their aim. That's their goal. That's what they're trying to do. Interesting. Talked to players this week. I mean, this really was a much stronger training camp than the Giants are used to, than a lot of the players there have ever had. It was grueling. It was different than what Brian Daboll has done in previous years, these last two. Different than what the Giants organization, obviously, kind of on or off the record preferred coming out of the Joe Judge regime, but looks very Joe Judge-ish this training camp. That was something that was blamed on a lot of injuries in the past, and now is the Giant way again. So that's interesting to see. But definitely, Mark, I think the team is trying to, and Daboll is trying to get his players and his team as physically prepared as they can for right off the bat. They know that week one is key. They know it's critical. They know because of their schedule that they have to win these games early. Listen to this, actually, this stat on not stat, but this alignment. So we know that the Giants need this game, right? The Giants need this game because they play Minnesota, they play the Washington Commanders on the road, and then their schedule goes at Cleveland versus Dallas, at Seattle versus Cincinnati versus Philly, at Pittsburgh, right? Not a lot of breathing room there for a team trying to get its footing that is still in a kind of build mode, right? However, if you think that's bad, listen to the Vikings schedule. After this Giants game, they go home and they host the San Francisco 49ers. Then they host the Houston Texans. Then they visit the Green Bay Packers. Then they host the Jets. Then they have a bye. And then coming out of the bye, they host the Lions and then visit the Rams. Talk about a brutal schedule for Minnesota. But what that schedule tells me, as badly as the Giants need this one, holy cow, the Vikings look like they need it even worse based on their sched, right? I mean, what a schedule they have. It's insane. So both these teams, I think, playing with a healthy amount of desperation right off the bat. And obviously, you're always playing to win and playing, hard as these teams anyway. But for, Daboll's sake, for the coach's sake, for the team's sake, the way their schedules are lining up, they really need this one. Strider says, Pat, I do feel bad for Mike Kafka not calling plays while he does get the blame. The injuries to the O-line and coaching was just not good, and it did not help. Hope Daboll calling plays works out. Yeah, it's also just, right, it's a crazy situation because he gets blame. He gets this kind of new title and probably some extra money with it to essentially keep quiet and stay in the building rather than being allowed to leave and go to Seattle to be the offensive coordinator. So a really crazy situation, transparently kind of optically driven, but Kafka going along with it, obviously, which is pretty ridiculous. All right, let's see. All right. Believer says that sucks for Carter Coughlin. No doubt. Yeah, that does. Even if he is, back on the practice squad and active on game day, it has to be a real shot. Not only to Carter just as a player, but also, I mean, this is just a player who thought that last year he deserved more defensive snaps, and now he comes back and re-signs, and he gets some of it in the spring, but then turns out they don't even have him on the active roster now. So brutal. Believer also says Joe is not a smooth operator at all. NFL for Joe Schoen means not for long. Michael says, I want to see Tracy as a returner. I'm interested in seeing him, or as a running back too. You will see him. A good player. We'll see. I'll be interested to see how much they use him on that ankle. Obviously, he was he averted disaster with the ankle as it looked when it happened. I don't know if he'll be limited at all in this game. I mean, he's not listed as limited. He's not listed on the injury report. They like him a lot as a runner. I like he falls forward. He's a strong player. Plays with a lot of strength, plays with pretty good leverage for a rookie. Only thing I saw pop up in camp was early on, a little bit of ball security stuff early, very early in late July, early August. So hopefully he gets that cleaned up. He did get it cleaned up for the rest of camp, so I didn't really see it on the ground after that. Strider says, Pat, do you know who said players come and go, but expectations never change? We always expect to win. That sounds like, was that Joe Schoen or John Mara? It's a good question. Tom Coughlin. Oh, I like that quote. Interesting. Well done, Strider. Love that. Good drop. He says Akeem Nicks was a rookie, caught a TD from Eli. Akeem Nicks had great leaping ability. Oh, great player. Believer says, agreed on Daniel Jones. He handled the Barkley thing in a very awkward way as well. How many yards does Neighbors have this weekend, says Michael? That's a good question. I'll go with, let's say, 81. 81, that's all I'll say. 81 receiving, maybe maybe like 7 rushing. Does he get a TD? I don't know. I think that'll probably determine whether they win or lose, is whether Malik gets a TD, right? Because I think this probably is a game where the Giants and the Vikings each score probably 2 touchdowns max. So I'd say if the Giants get in the end zone, the most likely guys to get in the end zone are probably Neighbors, Devin Singletary, maybe Tyrone Tracy if they put him in goal line and short yardage. But probably Neighbors, Singletary, and then Theo Johnson as a tight end, right? Or Daniel Jones running it in would be the next one. But yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting atmosphere. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be weird seeing the Giants in these uniforms. Although I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this. Now I don't like these century red uniforms, like the jerseys and everything. The helmets are cool. The players like the helmets as well. But I will say this. You look at these players wearing these red jerseys in practice, like just the straight red to prepare for the game. To me, the Giants look awesome in red. I know blue is their color and they're big blue and all that. I think they look awesome in red. I think it's their best jersey. I'm not saying they should wear it all the time, but I like it. I also like the white color rush as well, which I think they're not wearing this year, right? Because of these century reds. But I really do like the straight red. And I know even John Mara on down, they have bad luck, they feel like, and bad fortunes in those red jerseys. So they try, they basically aren't excited or interested really in wearing them again anytime soon. But I think they look great. I think seeing them on the practice field was a reinforcement of like, these things are awesome. Let's see. Michael says, how many games do the Giants play in the new uniform? I think they said at most 2, right? And at least 1. So they're going to play this first one. My guess is if this week goes well, they'll put it on the schedule for another game. And if this week doesn't go well, then that'll be it. That's my guess, right? They've left the door open to wear it another time, but it's not definite. I think it's really just going to depend on whether the vibes are high coming out of this game or not. By the way, if you weren't aware, the Pepsi Gate is gone. I don't know how much that has to do with medium Pepsi Gate, but it's no longer the Pepsi Gate. It's the Moody's Gate. So that's something interesting as well. Guys, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. Right here over my shoulder. A natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee and Bet Online. Estate98.com/Talkin Ball is the website to go to get a special buy one, get one on Estate 98 Coffee. Makes a great iced coffee in 10 seconds, or you can make a hot coffee or a latte in a minute more. Great product. Gabe, Giants Chronicles, won a second bottle of Estate 98 tonight by winning the trivia question. 7.5 sacks or more the last 3 years, only 3 players: Myles Garrett, Chris Jones, and the Giants' own Brian Burns. Javi says, I believe that the Giants will start the season 2-0. Javi, we will end Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard on that note with the vibes high. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks for a great chat, a great night. We've gone 2 hours strong. If you are listening on audio on Apple or Spotify, please join us next time on the YouTube channel, PL and NFL. But also thank you for listening here on audio on the Believe Network. Look for Gary Myers' podcast interview, talking a lot of Eli Manning Hall of Fame. Look for my interview on Mike Wobskull's Believe in Vikings. Wobby and I talk about this week 1 matchup and really get into breaking it down. He gets into a lot about the Vikings roster and depth chart and how it stacks up with the Giants. And we bat that back and forth about Kevin O'Connell and how maybe he will attack the Giants and what are the primary kind of areas to watch and look for when you're examining and watching this game. And also remember, Sunday after the game, Giants-Vikings, post-game live, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, post-game live from the MetLife Stadium press box. We will come right out of the locker room. I'll come out of the locker room after talking to the Giants players, Brian Daboll, all the coaches, and getting insights on injuries, updates on the players, what they feel about their win or their loss, and also spinning forward to the next week's game against Washington, and also dropping in some context from around the league. After post-game live on Sunday, Monday, we will be coming back in with an early afternoon episode. Me and Benny Fowler, Super Bowl champion, former NFL wide receiver, Broncos, Giants, several other teams. Benny and I will break down the action throughout the league. So looking forward to all of that and more. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you especially to Chronicles, Michael, Omega, Strider, A2Z, me, Mark, with great questions and opinions and feedback as well. Hunter really driving the chat early on as well. Barb, thank you. Thank you for everybody who's been a diehard. And see you next time on Talkin Ball Live.